Hello, my name's David Dungay and welcome to UC Partner Summit 2022. Today I'm joined by Marcus Cauchi, co-founder of Last Laughs and advocate of buyer safety. Welcome to the show, Marcus. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. You?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. Before we get into our questions today, and we're going to be talking about the sales landscape and how that's changed, should we do a bit of an introduction for those of our audience who might not have come across you before? Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Um, the last 35 years in sales in one form or another. The first 17 years essentially was 1 year 17 times over. I just worked harder and more stupidly, and it was a really hard graft. And then I came across a different approach, which was more grounded in actual psychology of how human beings really behave in the real world. And that was eye-opening. My sales went through the roof, and I did that for 16, 17 years. And I worked across over 500 different segments of the market. My clients have reported back over 6.5 billion in top line sales revenue growth. And essentially, I seem to spend most of my time trying to get people to get out of their own way.
Fantastic. Okay, well let's tuck into some questions. We've just been through, or we're still going through, quite a transformative time from sales and from a number of other points and places as well. But how have you seen the sales landscape change, particularly over these last sort of 2 years over the course of the pandemic?
It started out with everything just freezing up briefly, unless you were in something that was, a good defensive kind of business, or you were fixing the kind of problems like PPE and whatever. And then it really separated those who adapt well and those who didn't. And what the pandemic has done is it's brought digitization forward 10 years. So the idea that I think it was David Solomon at Goldman Sachs, the CEO, was trying to get everybody back in the office, and 50% of the staff didn't show up. You've got to face the fact that things have changed. The workforce is changing. 72% of people in technology are expected to be looking for a new job this year, according to a Talent LMS survey in tail end 2021. We're seeing the great resignation. We're seeing the great retirement. We are in the throes of the Cold War has come back, resurrected and gone hot. We have supply chain issues. I had my third interest rate rise on my savings in 3 months on Friday last week. I'm seeing inflation. What is it? 24.5% in construction, 12.5% in hospitality. So these are critical to the economic recovery. And a lot of these businesses are struggling to be able to recruit. They're struggling to be able to meet demand. I was talking to one manufacturer today, and they can't take an order for at least 12 months. So you've got to think differently. Can you repurpose old equipment? Is there a second-hand market that you can now tap into? Can you work around the consumables? Can you pivot and maybe offer services? So you've got to think differently. And what I'm seeing now is more cooperation, more collaboration, and a lot of people deciding to leave corporate. Seeing a lot of people leaving the SaaS market because, frankly, it's a horrible environment. And people are realizing this. And in fact, a lot of Gen Xers have decided not to return to work post-pandemic, so they're taking early retirement. Now, that's going to be a brain drain because a lot of experience and knowledge will go out. Now, also, some very bad practices and some old archaic beliefs will go with them. But what might follow may not have the maturity. So one area that I'm seeing a glimmer of hope is more emphasis on the middle management layer, because they're your biggest Achilles heel in your revenue operation. But across your entire business, they're probably the single greatest source of latent improvement, because if you help them actually become proper managers instead of supervisors and overpaid doers, which is what most of them do, and you help them to coach, to enable their people, to have the entire team think about the problem instead of the manager being a bottleneck and being constrained by their limited perspective. So I'm seeing a lot of stuff like that, and I'm seeing a huge growth in mostly noisy technology, because people are trying to work out, how the hell do I hit my quota, which has now been increased by 10 or 20% on last year, when I've only got half my headcount.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's talk about that glimmer of hope you mentioned. Obviously, when it comes to channel sales, how are your clients? How are they approaching? Outside of this middle management layer, how are they approaching their sales today?
There's more emphasis on fewer accounts. So I tend to adopt Price's law, which tells you that 50% of your production will come from the square root of the number of people in your organization or your market. So if you have 600 accounts, 24.5 or thereabouts will produce 50%. So find those 24, 25, because they're probably your best targets. Also, what I'm realizing through the data is that the biggest deals come from your third generation network. And they are by and large partner assisted, if not partner sold. 75% of all products sold on the planet in 2017 were sold through the channel. That's gone up, I think. And 93%, if I remember Forrester's data correctly, are partner assisted. So the channel is critical. And if you're not really focusing on how do you optimize the channel, and the way you do that, I believe, is finding adjacent providers who sell into the same addressable market and start building ecosystems. But these ecosystems must or depend on each of the partners being equally evolved. If one of the partners chooses to take advantage over the others, or take advantage of the customer, it falls apart. So you have to do a courtship, and that's really important.
Let's dig into that ecosystems question then a little bit. We're seeing all kinds of ecosystems in the market today. New ones emerging all the time. We both know a mutual colleague, Jay McBain's sort of opinion on ecosystems and the part they play. But what do you see for the sort of the future of ecosystems and the part they will play in channel sales going forwards?
Honestly, it really, really excites me, because there's some really, really interesting stuff going on at the moment. So where are we? Here we go. Most people, when they go to market, operate in the bottom left-hand corner, which is really expensive. It's about brute force. If you want to double your sales, you double your headcount, you double your spam rate, you double your dial rate, you double your demos, you double the number of proposals that you're sending out. But the results don't really change, do they? You put a lot of money and effort in, and you're selling cold. Now, the way so many vendors work is they outsource their misery to their partners, and they develop an expensive long tail by getting the partners to go to the cold market. Now, that kind of works, but it's still really inefficient. When you think about it, going into the cold market, you know that 97 to 99% of that activity is wasted. There are 4.3 quadrillion adverts being served every single year on Google and Facebook that get 0 or 1 click. That's $265 billion a year of businesses' money being just burnt. I mean, literally, you would be better in Vegas and placing it all on 32 Red or whatever it is. Now, the bottom right-hand corner is where smarter salespeople are working their network, their ecosystem. So they're selling hot rather than cold, because the difference in conversion rate between a cold buying cycle, which is about 1 in 20 buy, whereas selling hot, on average, 80 to 90% will buy if the person introducing you is trusted by both sides and the person being referred is timely, relevant, valuable, and what they're offering is affordable. Now, why would you not want a 16 to 18 times higher conversion rate? And the key is to prospect for those people who are already selling hot into your cold market. Now, there are more technologies that are evolving. So I'm working on developing a collaboration center, a war room, if you like, so that we can work with partners, even with competitors and the customer. And I can have my own teams working in there as well. Now, that's really exciting, because now it's all of our eyes on the customer's problem. That means we're more likely to come up with a robust solution.
Okay, so for partners looking at this today, how can they, swerve that cold, segment of the graph there, and ensure that they're only going after those hot prospects?
Well, the first thing you need to do is you've got to take a good long look in the mirror. The majority of businesses and the majority of people in business are operating in an industrial age kind of thinking and model. If you compete, you carry very sharp knives. If you coexist, you do so reluctantly, so your elbows are very sharp. And if you collaborate at arm's length. You don't give them your good stuff, just in case. Well, that's not really partnering. So you need to think differently. I think you need to understand that those systems of collaborate, coexist, and compete have come about unconsciously, and they're not great systems for humanity. The things that put us to the top of the food chain are our ability to cooperate and to work together to solve difficult problems. The Maasai have leaders for different generations and leaders for different functions. So they have leaders for defending the cattle against neighboring tribes, for hunting, for gathering, for dealing with freak weather conditions, or for migrating the herds. And each generation has leaders. So people know how to step forward when it's their turn and when to step back and let someone else lead. So you co-develop solutions with the customer and with your partners, and then you choreograph the message. This is really interesting. I'm starting to see this work now. So we have a primary quarterly message, and then 3 secondary messages that follow each month within the quarter, and that each of those supports the primary message. And every one of those is a question, and every one of the partners within the ecosystem answers it from their own perspective. And instead of just promoting your own stuff, you promote 5, 10, 12 other people's content, all answering the same question to your network. And then the customer decides which way in they want to solve that particular problem. And then once that person is in, or that company is in, their job is to do a good job and then pull the others through without any friction. And I'm seeing that happen. I have one partner that I work with in the renewables space, and he's turning over 8 billion in renewables billings. Now, they only take a tiny fraction off the top, but a tiny fraction off 8 billion is a load of cash. Now, bear in mind, they started it 8 years ago on their kitchen table, him and his brother, or brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of ecosystem has been built by creating an environment where he's constantly giving. So that network is built up of adjacent providers. So what you end up with is this kind of shaped ecosystem where I have a revenue operations funnel, I have a management funnel, I have a leadership, ecosystem. I have a training ecosystem, I have a renewables ecosystem, a supply chain ecosystem, and a procurement ecosystem. Now, within each of those, there may be 5 to 20 different vendors, all of whom are really very good at what they do. And this is, again, another key to making ecosystems successful, because no one can afford to fail the customer without making good. And equally, the customer can't afford to upset any of the vendors because they lose the entire ecosystem. So everyone benefits. It's a triple win.
Yeah, I still feel there's for your typical channel organization, especially in the communications channel, it can be quite cutthroat. That can be an interesting hurdle to get over for a business owner who has spent their life trying to compete.
It will be cutthroat if you think that your job is to shift tin. If your job is to solve difficult problems and answer and solve difficult questions. So one of my favorite questions of the moment is, what are you doing at today to prepare your managers for what's to come? I know most of you have been thinking, well, I've just got through 2 years of this. Give me a break. Well, I hate to tell you, it's only going to get worse. By the looks of it, we are heading into the deepest recession any of us have ever seen. So you better work out better questions, then you can get better answers. So the question is, how do you thrive in that environment? Well, you do so by cooperating. You do so by helping your customers solve their big, difficult problems, not by trying to make your quota and get a transaction over the line.
Okay, so we're coming towards the end of our session today, Marcus, but I want to leave our viewers with something succinct and something they can really take away with them. What makes a successful sales strategy for a channel organization today? If you could sum that up, what are the elements within that?
It's a handful of special forces partners who you help become incredibly successful. Your number one job is to help them achieve their ambitions and goals. And if they happen to sell your stuff along the way, that's great. But remember, if you want people to help you achieve your goals, help them achieve theirs. And if you want to have control, you have to give it up in the channel. Because none of your channel partners are going to do what you tell them to. They're going to do what they want to do. So find a way of making what they want to do align with what you need them to do. That means listen, ask questions, actually spend time in their business, planning and strategizing together and working out how you can help them sell all of their portfolio, not just your own.
Okay, well, thank you, Marcus. Insightful as ever. Always enjoy talking to you. Thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but you can follow all the action on social media by following the hashtag Powering Partners. That's it from me. My name's David Dungay. Don't forget you can follow lots of other companies and lots of other content within the UC Partner Summit event. So make sure you have a look around. There's lots to see. And I'll see you next time.